Hey everybody, what is going on? Bahroo here, and today I have another episode of Keep or Toss, where we go over the different mechanics or things that make up Borderlands and its universe, and we ask ourselves, should this return in the Borderlands pre-sequel? Should we keep it? Should we toss it? Should we alter it in any way? How would you change it? And today's topic is going to be going over melee weapons as well as melee weapon attachments. There's a lot of different things that could have been done with melee weapons in Borderlands 2, and while Borderlands is a gun-centric game, it does have this melee combat to it. For example, Zero, he has an entire tree dedicated to melee, as well as Creek, his main action skill, and has almost, you could almost say, two trees dedicated to melee and its ins and outs. So it makes sense that hopefully they'll be expanding on the melee system in the Borderlands pre-sequel. So let's just go ahead and get started with melee attachments. Now, melee attachments were in Borderlands 1 and for the most part pretty lackluster. Not really many people use them, but in Borderlands 2 they added in Roid. Roid would allow you to do significantly more damage with melee weapon attachments because they were multiplicative and they just did a ton of damage. As you can see, yeah, I'm on OP 0, but still, Zero's not really having too much of an issue, just murdering everything. And this is kind of fun, just being able to run through the game, murder everything, and just have a good time with melee. But, so let's just go over the attachments themselves. All melee attachments are about 50% melee. Then you have the Law, which you can get in Sanctuary, and that also has 100% melee damage. And then finally you have the Rapier, which you can get from the Scarlet DLC in the Hater's Folly bottle mission, and that one has the highest melee damage, coming in at 200% melee damage, which is absolutely huge. And if you really wanted to, we've gone over this before, you could merge them all together for 800%, but that's just beyond overkill on basically everything, even raid bosses. But anyway, that's not the topic here. The topic is the melee weapons. Anyway, so we were going over the melee weapons, and I'm hoping that they'll add sort of a new type of system to go with these melee weapons. Now, as you know, the gun, if it has an element to it, you'll notice that it sort of puts this little element on the blade. If you have a caustic rifle, you'll notice the blade has like this green tip to it and everything, but this is only visual. It doesn't add sort of any corrosive effect or poison effect to the melee weapon itself, and I'm hoping that in the pre-sequel they can potentially expand the melee system to have, say, if I am using a slag weapon with well, actually, hopefully slag doesn't return, but we'll just say, for an example, a slag weapon with a blade on it, my melee attacks have a chance to slag the target, or maybe it'll just deal actual slag damage, because as it stands right now, no matter what element your gun is, the blade itself, your melee damage is always going to be white damage. So maybe they could add sort of that, where if I had a fire weapon, I could deal fire damage, and this would add a little bit more depth to the melee weapons, as well as making them even more useful, because they would be able to benefit from using the correct element on the correct enemy type. Fire versus flesh, corrosion versus armor, shock versus shield, that sort of thing. And you can maybe even include extra effects to it. Maybe a shock weapon, in addition to doing extra shock or extra damage to shields, could potentially stun the target. Maybe the fire from the melee could spread to other targets. Just other things that could potentially be done with the melee system, and it would expand on it a lot more. Now, another thing that I also wanted to touch on was actual melee weapons. Like, something that would actually fill your equipment slot, and you wouldn't use a gun anymore, you would use an actual melee weapon. A good example of this is Krieg. Now, he actually uses an actual melee weapon. Before they patched it out, you could actually get Krieg's Buzz Axe in your inventory and look at it. That's something that you can do. You may actually still be able to do it. I'm not entirely sure, but Krieg has a physical melee weapon in his hands, and it would be nice to be able to have just unique weapons that are just melee based and could have their own unique effects to meleeing enemies. Say, you know, you create some sort of area of effect every time you melee, which would be kind of nice. You know, add the thumpers effect. You know, you do like this Nova every time you melee. Only hopefully they won't add in friendly fire damage and kill all of your teammates, but that would kind of suck. But anyway, you know, add these type of new things to the melee system in general, because I've never had an issue with melee. I just felt it was kind of bland as it is now, because it's very there's no real depth to it. It's hit it with the grog with a melee attachment and repeat until it's dead. There's no depth to it, and I'm hoping that they can expand on that in the pre-sequel. It would be really nice to have that extra level. That extra level of depth to the game. But, you know, you guys let me know, how do you feel about it? Do you think we should have unique melee weapons? Do you think that maybe the melee attachments themselves should have the different elements attached to them? How would you do it? And you know, there is the new frost element. If they went the route with adding elemental effects to the blades, you could have a frost blade, which I think would be pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie, it would add a new support element to melee outside of this just does lots of damage. You could have a frost blade and a couple hits from that, and you would start freezing the enemies rather than just, you know, being a different source of damage, adding more utility to the melee class. And you know, like I said, Borderlands, it isn't a melee centric game, but it would be great to have a different alternative instead of just shooting with guns. And you know, maybe if they added the elemental blades, melee wouldn't be as bad in raiding as it currently is. But I don't know about making melee raid viable. I would like to see it, but that's up to you. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much going to be covering everything that I wanted to talk about in terms of melee weapons, the melee weapon attachments, the elemental effects attached to them, the melee weapons themselves, you know, holding these giant melee weapons. You know, actually, this brings me to one more thing. Brick ran around with Sledge's hammer but never used it. That's something I want to see in the pre-sequel. I don't care what you have to do to justify it, Anthony. I want to run around with Sledge's hammer and just beat the shit out of everybody with it. I don't care what you have to do to make that an actual thing, but I would love for it. But anyway, that's like I said, that's going to pretty much be everything. Be sure to leave your comments in the comment section below. I love hearing all the feedback you guys have been giving me, and this series in general. I love being able to read all these detailed responses and all your unique ideas to go along with it. You guys had a lot of different ideas for the Hyperion amp shields, and I definitely did enjoy it. But anyway, I will see you guys in the next episode. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed this. Help support me in what I do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Later.